In this tutorial we will create a vector logo in Inkscape. Inkscape is a free vector drawing application, which can be downloaded for free from inkscape.org. First, let's take a closer look at the logo. It has 3 elements: blue background shape, 3 green arrows, and 3 curved text captions. We will create each of these elements separately, and then combine them together. Let's start with the green arrows. The arrows are identical, so I will create one arrow and then copy and rotate it 2 times. Before starting, I'll make some adjustments to the document view. First, I'll zoom in a bit. I want the logo to be 300 pixels wide and 300 pixels high, so the right zoom here may be around 70%. I'll also show the grid to make it easier to draw. The grid became visible, but I will change the way it is displayed. In this dialog box, I'll check that the grid unit is set to pixels. Then set the spacing X to 10, spacing Y also to 10. I'll change the color of grid lines to dark green, with partial opacity. Note that the major grid lines appear every 5 normal grid lines. Because I want the grid to be lines, and not dots, I will uncheck the Show Dots instead of Lines checkbox. I'll also change the zoom to 80% in order to see both major and normal grid lines. Before starting to draw, I'll also check that Enable Snapping button on the Snap Controls bar is enabled. The Snap Nodes or Handles button is enabled, as well as the Snap to Grids buttons. Now, everything is set and ready to start drawing. The first shape to draw is the green arrow. I have made a sketch to make it easier to draw, so let's import it as a bitmap. It needs to be rotated so that the arrow points horizontally. The size can also be slightly increased. The bitmap with sketch should be locked to prevent unintentionally moving or selecting it. I'll rename its layer to Sketch. Lock it, change its opacity to around 65, and create a new layer for drawing. I'll switch to the pen tool and start drawing from the arrowhead. Create node points around the arrow outline. Notice that snapping makes it much easier to place the nodes. Some nodes need smoothing. This can be done using the node tool. I'll select the node, press Shift key, and drag a little to the left, and a handle appears from one side, which allows me to make the node smooth. The other node must be smooth from both sides, so I'll use a toolbar button for this purpose, and tweak the handles a little. The arrow outline is ready. I'll make this arrow's fill color cyan for now, and lower the opacity to make the sketch outline visible. At this moment, the arrow is one shape. However, in the final version, it must consist of two shapes. That's because one part of the arrow will have gradient fill and the other part will have solid fill. The two parts are separated by the line where the arrow folds. The internal line, marking the fold, is missing from the arrow. In order to create it, I will split the arrow into two parts. First, I'll make a copy of the arrow and paste it exactly in the same place. So now there are two arrow outlines, one above the other. I'll make the new arrow semi-transparent green. Then, I'll draw a shape around the lower part. The shape must match exactly the line which is missing. The rest of it is just approximately surrounding the arrow part. This node needs to be smoothed to match the missing line. I'll make the color of this shape red, with transparency. So now we need to select both the shape and the arrow outline, and intersect them. Now we have two separate pieces, which match together, and form the final arrow. It's time to set the arrow fill. The upper part needs a gradient fill. Select the gradient tool. I will set the gradient start point and end point to appropriate shades of green color. The lower part will be a solid green color. The stroke needs to be changed too. Shift-click on the color swatch to change the stroke color. I'll set the width of the stroke to 3 pixels. The same applies to the upper part. The arrow is ready, but I think it's a little too flat. So I'll reshape it a little bit, to make it more round. I have to change both shapes, so that they match. Also, the internal line could be a little more smooth. This completes the first part of the tutorial. In the next part, I'll show you how to add the two remaining arrows by using guides and rotation.